What's this all about? Why are they doing that? What's going on here?
It's Curious John. What is he curious about today?
The town of Longgang is famous for a type of rice noodle called migan. They're flat, springy, and they come here from Southeast Asia. Last week, we visited Longgang's annual Rice Noodle Festival to hear the story of how these noodles came to Taiwan. Today, we're going back to Longgang to learn more about how the festival is celebrated. Our guide once again this week is Ryan Gillis from the UK, whose wife's family includes many of the area's rice noodle masters. Longgang's Rice Noodle Festival stretches out over 2 weekends. The first week's theme is water, while the second week centers on fire. I asked Ryan to tell us about what this means. He says the first weekend marks the Water Splashing Festival, a Southeast Asian New Year celebration.
Last weekend, a very large water fight. Traditionally, it would have been a religious or a spiritual person sort of sprinkling you with a little water, but like it is now, it sort of turns more into a all-day street water fight festival, doesn't it? So that was the first weekend. The Fire Festival this weekend is more in celebration of a very traditional festival from the Yi people, and if I can remember the story correctly, it is about a heavenly king. He demands respect and sacrifice throughout the year, and eventually the villagers rise up against him because they feel it's too much. So he decides to send down an evil deity to punish them, and they nominate their local hero. He's a very big wrestler. I believe his name is Atalaba. He fights off the deity, and the heavenly king feels so angry that they have fought off the evil deity. He sends a swarm of locusts down to devastate their crops. So Atalaba turns around and says to the village people, "We can do this together if we rise up. Everybody grab your fire torches, and we will destroy the locusts." The swarm of locusts is destroyed with the fire, and the few that escape do so underground and lie dormant. And so from that point, every year, the Yi people come out on the same time every year with their fire torches to keep them underground. Later on in the evening, once it gets a bit dark, you'll see fire torch dancers, fire torches, a huge fire procession and bonfire in the middle in the main arena. And it's just a way, once again, of everybody coming together and knowing that they can achieve everything that they want together.
Ryan says he's pleased to see how the festival has grown in the 6 years since it started. A number of ambassadors and representatives from countries around the world are among the VIPs at this year's festival. It's truly become an international event. But what about Ryan's own involvement? Well, his contribution to the festival may be one of the most popular things here. The Fire Torch Festival this weekend features lots of dancing. So what should you do if the idea of dancing in public makes you a bit nervous? Well, the answer is practice, and Ryan and his brother have built the perfect tool to help you out. Here it is.
My younger brother and I came up with this idea, the traditional kind of dance machine with the arcade pad where you forwards, backwards, left, right, diagonally. So we programmed this together and then put some footage in the background so that people can practice the dance on the spot, so that later on this evening when everybody comes together to do the dance themselves, they can do it for real.
Required practice,
Required practice, yeah. So it's been very popular these past 2 weekends, so we'll definitely bring it back next year as well, I'm sure. Yeah, you can see this person she's doing very well, actually.
The kids have brought it down.
Yeah.
They're ready for tonight.
And if they do very well on the pad here, they can win a small prize as well. So a little extra added draw as well. You can learn the dance and you can get a free gift. So we've got, I think, 6 different songs we put on this one, ranging from very easy all the way up to very hard. So depending on how ambitious you are, you can give a go on either one.
How would you rate your dancing skills?
Well, I can't comment on this one because I made it. So I spent so much time practicing it and fine-tuning it that I can do them all now. But I'd like to think my dancing was okay. When it comes to the dance at the end of the evening when we all get together, I can hold my own. I do okay. It's kind of like a conga meets American line dance style thing. So it's good fun. So I invite you to try it.
Last week, we introduced the origin of this community and their famous rice noodles. During the Chinese Civil War, most nationalist soldiers retreated to Taiwan. But some crossed over the Chinese border into Southeast Asia instead. They were the Lost Army. These Chinese soldiers settled down and married with local ethnic groups. Years later, when Taiwan's government eventually brought them here, these veterans brought their multi-ethnic families and traditions with them. How much does the average Taiwanese person know about this story? Ryan says the original wave of nationalist soldiers left a much bigger impression. The story of the Lost Army hasn't been remembered so well.
I think it is a very hidden, very unknown community, actually. They know that there are groups of Thai people in Taiwan. Everybody knows there are groups of Myanmar or even people from Yunnan. The whole story of the Lost Army and how they came back here, it's a relatively new story, actually, because whilst perhaps the predominant storyline is the people that arrived here in the 50s, this community didn't arrive here till much later, sort of the 60s, 70s. I don't think there was much fanfare when they arrived, so the ones that know will swear by it and say that it's the best food culture in the world, I hope. And there are others who just simply haven't heard. And we hope that, as the festival gets bigger and bigger, more of Taiwan will learn about it and more of the world will learn about it.
Near the main event stage, Ryan talks more about his own family's part in this story. His father-in-law was a soldier in the Lost Army, and he has the marks to prove it.
As a small child, he lived in Myanmar. His father was a principal in a school up in the mountains, and one day the nationalist forces came through the village and they were recruiting, and they said to him, if you come join us, you get a gun, you get some food, you get clothes, and we'll look after you. So we thought, yeah, sign me up, I'll come along. So he joined the army and he rose through the ranks and eventually became the intelligence officer that he is. He has a bullet hole in his ear where he almost bought it. So yeah, he was a member of the Lost Army and he met Li Shimei Ame, my mother-in-law.
She was a young local girl from a village of the Lisu people. Romance blossomed, and the rest is practically the whole story of this community. We approach a large art installation that Ryan says represents this story. 3 pyramids, each one bigger than the last. They're actually lanterns, and they featured at this year's Taiwan Lantern Festival.
Actually, it's perhaps fate that they're currently talking about Morse code and the way they communicate their language on the stage right now. This first one is 2 silhouettes of soldiers from the Lost Army. As you can see here, there's sort of the black silhouette, and then the white dotted and dashed outline is Morse code. This Morse code is the Morse code of their story. At night, later on, you'll be able to see a lot more clearer. It'll light up, and you can really see the Morse code light shine through the silhouette of the soldier. Both women soldiers and men, they all fought side by side in the jungle. So that's what this first lantern represents. Moving on, this large triangle represents the peoples that they met whilst they were in the Golden Triangle. There's over 6,000 studs on this particular triangle. First we have the soldiers who were lost in the jungles, and then we have the ethnic minorities who they met while they were there. And then moving on to the third and final lantern. Very bright, very red, very shiny. If you've been around Taiwan enough, you'll realize that in a lot of Zhuanzhen villages, one of the popular designs for their doors is a red door with white horizontal stripes going through the middle of it. It's the red of the red door combined with flowing white stripes once it illuminates later on this evening. And it symbolizes the new home that the two of them together eventually found. The backdrop here, the bamboo basket is something very typical they would normally prepare and dry their foods in, has painting on the front of it. What initially seems to be a flame, but is actually, if you look closely, 5 fire-dancing women.
Is there a local artist who designed this?
This was done by my wife.
Really?
Yeah, she very much hopes one day to be a full-time artist, a full-time designer, so the government approached her and said, would you mind producing something for the Lantern Festival themed on your culture, and this is what she came up with.
And this community story is continuing. Ryan's own family is now growing up here. He says he'll make a point of teaching his children about this part of their heritage as they grow older. It's now decades since the soldiers of the Lost Army and their families made the journey to Longgang. For their children and grandchildren, most of whom were born here, this is home. But a stringy kind of rice noodle called migan tethers this whole community together and keeps them from drifting too far from their roots. I'm Curious John, and I hope you'll join me again next week.